Ken Ofori-Atta, who is the Finance Minister-Designate, has resumed his vetting right now. We'll take you to the appointment committee.
The unit has been agreed on, and it will be done.
Thank you. I really hope that this project will come to fruition, because we all know that Ghana will be the winner if we continue. Still on tourism, the UNWTO World Tourism Barometer has indicated that international tourism arrivals declined by 69%. And we all know that in Ghana, tourism is the fourth foreign exchange earner. We also know as a fact that tourism is public sector-led, private sector-driven. And so without the private sector, tourism is not going anywhere. I am therefore surprised that in the 2021 budget, I don't see the private sector anywhere in the budget, especially the pages that talk about tourism. I don't see any package that seeks to bring the tourism private practitioners out of the woods. We know that their businesses has decreased by 69%, yet there is nothing about them in terms of packages or anything that helps them to bring their businesses back. What do you say to that?
Thank you very much indeed. I think the woes of the tourism industry are quite clear, and you correctly do characterize it. In our 2020 sort of rescue package, we had a 2 billion guarantee facility to support various industries, especially in the hospitality area. In this budget, you realize that there's a tax deductibility for tourism, hospitality, and other companies of that sort. But I think what is also going to be an intervention, as I mentioned earlier in the morning, is the establishment of our National Development Bank, which will be a warehouse bank, which can then funnel resources into specific banks that allocate resources to these areas that need a stimulus. So the banking structure, the financial structure, we are strengthening it with the entry of the National Development Bank to be able to support areas such as that. So yes, there was a 2 billion guarantee facility in 2020, and then this year also we have put in place some tax reliefs to be able to support them further. And thirdly, once the development bank is also operational, that gives access to more capital to support them. But as we, Mr. Chairman, as the AFCFTA is located in Ghana, I think it gives us a mandate for investment tourism opportunities to clear so that we become a regional hub, and that certainly will also help in this regard.
Now to the financial sector cleanup. Can you apprise us with how much was used to clean the bank and how much was needed to save them?
Honourable Member, I think we have ruled that since we have decided.
No, that one is not about whether he closed the bank legally or not legally. It's just about whether it could have been saved. So it's not the bank, not the court matter.
The quantum of the indebtedness.
Yes, please.
Very well.
Not the court one. I am conscious of being prejudicial. Like how much was used to clean the banks and how much did they need to survive?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I think so far, you know, the processes of the whole bank cleanup is really the purview of the Bank of Ghana. You know, so let's have a clarity on the asset quality reviews, and all of those analyses that were done, and their recommendation as to how to go forward to create a robust banking infrastructure. And as we can see, the results have been quite stellar because we have a much stronger banking infrastructure than we had in 2017 or 16. So the decisions as to what the banks require for acquisition or cleanup is also, in a sense, directed by the Bank of Ghana as to whom they will accept as banks, and how to save depositors' money, etc. So we spent north of 21 billion on the banks, and I think the target for the asset management companies may be as high as 8.5 billion that we are looking at. So far, we have intervened with maybe $2 or $3 billion to SEC towards resolution of that. I think some of the AMCs took us to court, which meant that we couldn't proceed with the depositors. And we sat down to determine ourselves that, well, even if the owners are taking us to court, we have every reason as a government to look at the depositors and try and put something there in the interim before that is solved. So that was a humanitarian and clear act, and we have done so. As I mentioned earlier, we expect by the third or fourth quarter, the asset management companies will also be done, and then we'll look at consolidation of all of our debts in one piece. But I think the objective should be really clear to us. Sometimes we forget. Imagine, just close your eyes and imagine 4.6 million depositors on the roads in our towns like the Great Depression because they have lost their money. It is then that you begin to tease out whether truly, this thing was necessary. May they have been cost overruns? We don't know, but we think we've done the best that the country deserved, and the results are quite clear. When something is working, you kind of take it for granted until it is not there, and you see a whole cascading effect of men's gold or whatever around the nation, and you realize that this was a bold act to be taken with certain consequences, but all in all, the survival of the country and the banking system was saved. And I think I really share in the President's view of congratulating the Bank of Ghana for coming through and us for finding the resources. So even as I talk about $21 billion of shareholder, of taxpayers' money, it did still come to the taxpayers in the sense that their deposits were saved, which might not have been saved.
Yeah, well, this will be my last.
That's more.
So should I take it that for the amount of money that was needed to save the banks, you are not in a position to tell us, Bank of Ghana, or rather be in a position to tell us the amount of money that could have been used to save the banks?
As far as we know, Mr. Chairman, is a 21 billion that we have stated, because that is what we use, and possibly another 8 billion for the asset management companies. Thank you.
That will be all, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Honorable Bama.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Minister, congratulations. Minister, the Ghanaian business community is looking up to you and Honorable Chair Martin, the Trade Minister, to put in place deliberate measures and strategies to revive local businesses and to make them very competitive, especially with the coming into force of AFTA, and also with COVID-19 challenges. The service sector is on the decline, oil and gas sector, contractors have issues with payments, publishers, manufacturers, and the whole business community is looking up to you and the trade minister. What deliberate strategies, programs are you going to put in place to give them the confidence that this government under President Akufo-Addo wants to bring them up to that status of being very competitive within the sub-region and globally? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. This is a whole thesis of industrial development, but it's an important, very important question. A center-right party obviously believes in the promotion of business, and I think modern day theory also talks about an entrepreneurial state in which the state becomes a booster to support enterprises to grow. I think you can begin to see some green shoots of recovery with regards to our approach to MBSSI and the monies we gave to ensure that small and medium enterprises begin to get the confidence and have access to resources. You know that Exim Bank has, over these 4-year periods, been able to fund quite a number of companies, including a Kumfi as an example of what can be done. But we see the huge gap between our savings capacity and financial resources. So the question really for government is either A, whether you can create a domestic environment that is stable, and you can see lending rates trending down, not as fast as we'd want. You can see even in the COVID period, the foreign exchange was about 3.9% or so, which is very helpful for industry. Of course, demand has been torpedoed over this period, but it's a good time to begin to assess the market and what you did. And we ourselves were impressed with their response to the production of PPEs over that time, and we got some resources to support them. The key issue in our mind is whether we can find a vehicle that would bring in other capital. And that is where the intervention of the new development bank is concerned, so that we can, and that one is supposed to be $1 billion capitalized. I think we have about 500 million, sewn up already, which we will. So we expect that in May that will happen. In 2020, we did set up a guarantee fund of $2 billion. We have given some tax rebates for this budget, and truly our aim is to work with them to further give them certain stimulus that will help them to rebuild. So the whole of our Tampa project really in the end is about how to grow businesses for Ghana to become a regional hub in that, which will extend their market share. So, Mr. Chairman, that is front and center to us, and I think we'll continue to have meetings with them to make sure that that happens. But on the back of that, Mr. Chairman, is the President's vision to also turn literally every resource we have with value add. And that is going to be a key way to get more entrepreneurs, graduating from medium level to large status. And we tend to do that for our nation. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Chairman, my second question is on the revenue side. And yesterday we had a very good interaction with your team from the GRA. We know the intentions of government and we also know the intentions of the citizens. But when it comes to the payment of taxes and other levies becomes an issue, yet we want everything done immediately. Property tax and its collection and other revenue mobilization strategies, especially property tax. I recall the former senior minister saying that we could raise as much as 10 billion if you're able to put the right strategies in place. People can stand and boast of having 100 houses, but yet if you ask them how much they pay for property taxes, I think it's sometimes sickening to hear how much they pay. Revenue collection strategies, especially property rates. What can we do to enhance it? Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. I think the issue of revenue collection certainly has been the bane of the country. We have sort of ranged between 13 and 15% of GDP, which is under, maybe what is happening in West Africa, 18 to 20, and the OECD countries almost 32%. So when you imagine that GRA is, let's say, about 14, 15, and you are moving it to 20, $45 billion, another 15 billion, that would be like 60 billion. You can see the increment. Property taxes, as you mentioned, senior minister did take it on as an area in which we're going to do a lot of work. The Vice President office has also done so, and we need to get this all in a way digitalized so that we can have it easily done. And digitalization exercise, as you know, has improved tremendously, and right now we are going to transfer the 15.5 million odd people who have their national IDs onto the GRA list, etc. So you are beginning to now close the circle as to transactions you do and traceability. So you are going to be able to have big data in a way in which, we know where you live, we know whether you buy a car, we know whether you buy an airline ticket, and literally could construct your tax returns at the end of April for you. I think it's going to lead to a better ability to determine where these properties are to be able to tax them. So it's key, and the other issue there is property taxes usually out of local government. But if we at GRA have the infrastructure, we'll then have to come to some agreement as to how to do it. The challenge, Mr. Chairman, for us then is a look into the management of the districts, because you are then going to have an incredible amount of resources going to these districts, and therefore the governance structure to ensure that, A, they are empowered with skills, and B, the whole issue of managing their hospitals, their schools, etc., draws in the citizenry for empowerment and an ability to ensure that the district assemblies are accountable and that those resources are used very well. I'm not completely convinced at this juncture that the administrative management of resources at the level that you or guest house are even comfortable with. So even as we push for the realization of property taxation, is also a looking from the House to see what we can do to ensure that these monies are not going to be wasted, and you are going to have strong municipalities who are cleaning their gutters, setting up their security system, in a way in which the citizens can also challenge them and make sure that all of these areas develop in tandem with the capital cities. Thank you.
Chairman, to my third question, the Bank of Ghana at their recent MPC, Monetary Policy Committee, kept the policy rate at 14.5%. It signals a certain response from the banks and the financial sector as to how credit is on lent to banks and how it trickles down. Banks are complaining about corporate tax, national reconstruction levy, banking sector cleanup, and other related costs. Do we have a strategy in place where they wouldn't, for want of these strategies that the central bank is put in place, not transfer those costs to SMEs so as to not to affect their businesses, and so doing affect customers of the banks and SMEs? Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. I think, Mr. Chairman, the issue as we sit, either Minister of Finance looking at the whole of financial landscape, the Bank of Ghana these 3-4 years has been pretty decisive, courageous, and promotional. And we can see the forbearances that they gave in 2020 to make sure that these banks do well. I think the banks would also admit that they are a far cry from what they were in 2016 or early 2017, and their numbers do reflect that. But I think even more important is their confidence the banking supervision is working much better than it used to work. And that, when you are in the industry, is huge comfort to you. I think the numbers at the stage of 2021, with the pandemic, with second and third spikes around the world, a lack of security on global supply chains, a country that does not have a reserve currency, may lead to some sort of caution. MPCs are not annual, and so the ability to titrate and therefore decide on whether it should be lower or higher is still with us. I don't think we can use, it is not a budget that we can say that nothing can be done. Now, my own sense, I mean, I've never owned a bank. We just never had the expertise when I was at Data Bank to say that because we are a financial institution, we want to own a bank. We just did not have that and stuck to what we know how to do. But when you have an association in which through the period of these very difficult sort of AQRs that were determined, and the association does not seem to have teeth as to its self-regulatory response to issues, you then ask whether there's collective responsibility. A, to make sure your industry is clean, and to keep, agents who will not promote the sanctity of your industry. So we all become part of the bad behavior, and at the very least, we should all be part of rebuilding it. And so I think an honest discussion will reveal that, really, let's bet and share, so that we also share in the profits that are coming. Thank you very much.
Chairman, last question. That's my last question. Last question, Mr. Chairman. Very important question. Very, very important. Minister, I've been given the opportunity to ask you this question, which worries the private sector. They're asking, they send this question for me to find out from you how you will ensure that banks do not just take deposits and invest in government securities, but rather invest in the private sector. That's my last question.
Yeah.
From the private sector.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Very, very good question. You would realize that we did a guarantee fund. We also have what we call GESL, which is supposed to support agri industry areas. I think even in countries as the United States, there are rules which ensure that community developments are part of the remit of the banks. And so I think we may need to have a dialogue, as we develop the Ofori-Atta program, which is going to have discussions with banks, financial institutions, pension funds, as to their participation in this transformation exercise. And in that, I'm sure we can construct some agreements on how to ensure maybe some participation of some law. But these are things that will particularly be led by the BOG. It is when the government decides to either guarantee certain things to facilitate it. But I think the BAG is also anxious for growth within this stuff. And we hope that we will be able to, as the banks get profitable, have these discussions which will all move us together in this transformation exercise. And thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. My first question to the honorable nominee relates to the annual report on the management and use of petroleum revenues, and in particular, the reports of PIAC, the Public Interest and Accountability Committee. And I believe it's in order, Mr. Chairman, with your permission, to congratulate PIAC on their 10th anniversary, which they celebrated yesterday. I noticed the president was with them yesterday. But let me begin with the 2019 report. At page 15 of the report, PIAC writes, and this is the report submitted to Parliament in compliance with the law. PIAC states, and I quote, "For the third consecutive year, the actual ABFA was not fully utilized or accounted for. It brings the total unutilized and unaccounted for ABFA to 1,479,896,299.86 Ghana cedis at end of 2019. It continues. The Ministry of Finance is acting with impunity regarding accounting for the use of ABFA. PIAC therefore urges Parliament to bring its oversight mandate to bear," unquote. I also hold in my hands an August 2020 issue paper that PIAC was forced to publish because of the continuous non-compliance. And at page 24 of the report, of the issue paper, PIAC had this to say: the recurring non-compliance in the reported expenditure of the Ministry of Finance to the PRMA requirement to spend at least 70% of the ABFA on public investment expenditure is another challenge. In 2019, 55% was spent on capital expenditure and 45% spent on goods and services. Another challenge in the implementation of the law relates to the recurrence of unutilized ABFA. As at the end of 2019, the total unspent ABFA amounted to 1.48 billion Ghana cedis. This situation is worrying, especially as it is becoming a trend and corruption risk to the management and use of petroleum revenues. Honorable nominee, this has continued, and according to PIAC, in the 2020 report to Parliament, they are putting the final figure of unaccounted for oil revenues at 2.46 billion as at end of June 2020. I am aware of meetings that have taken place between you and PIAC, and I know that PIAC stands by this figure of 2.46 billion Ghana cedis unaccounted for petroleum revenues. How do you respond to this, honorable nominee, and how can you assure this committee that if given the nod, what PIAC is calling a culture of impunity under your watch will stop?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. As you mentioned, we have had a series of meetings of PIAC to try and reconcile these numbers and their use. I can assure the House that this is not tantamount to any type of corruption from the ministry or the government in any way. We should be clear on that. With regards to, therefore, their number of 2.4 billion, in which they insist on, you can see that the President was at the ceremony yesterday, and that is an indication of our commitment to work with them to clear that. Mr. Chairman, let me assure you that all of these issues would be resolved, and we can have, a happy medium with PIAC going forward. We do not, there may be honest mistakes made, but there's no profligacy on our part or a sense of arrogance as to the use of public money. My training as an investor was to invest people's money, and that has to be protected. And so when you look at Databank, it's investment of 500,000 people's money, and those are sacrosanct. Mr. Chairman, let me assure you that all of these things will be resolved, and we're going to have a period, these 4 years coming, in which we are all totally aligned. That's my commitment to you.
Mr. Chairman, by way of follow-up, is the honorable nominee able to give us an indication on when this will be resolved? You've given us an assurance that you will resolve this.
Well, we have had their 10-year anniversary. I am back full-time at work. We should after the Easter break, have a meeting with the new chair and craft a way forward that will be comfortable for everyone and follow the tenets of the law. That assurance I give you.
Mr. Chairman, I move to my second question, which relates to, I would say, genuine growing concern about what some analysts are calling a stranglehold over the financial sector by your close business associates and allies. Some have even suggested that it's classic state capture, and that if this is not re-looked at, it would be inimical to Ghana's financial progress, and so far as best practice and transparency is concerned. I have the incorporation documents of the entities you have interest in: Databank Financial Services, Databank Asset Management, Databank Brokerage Limited, Enterprise Group of Companies. And I see that the directors and key shareholders are the persons that you have placed in very strategic positions. For example, you have Kelly Gajapo, who sits on the Bank of Ghana board. You have Reverend Obami Tete, who is Director General of the Securities and Exchange Commission. You know, they regulate the investment companies. You have Samson Akligo, who is Director of Financial Sector at the Ministry of Finance, and is also sitting on the board of the National Insurance Commission. So if you take the banking sector, you take the investment sector, you take the insurance sector, your close associates and directors, shareholders of your companies are in charge of the sector. How do you respond to genuine concern that there is some stranglehold, some state capture that is going on, and for that matter, we are not having a fair ecosystem for other businesses to thrive? And how do you even think that these regulators can regulate entities that you have beneficial interest in?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. The issue of, state capture of a financial sector, I think it's a difficult one to behold. First of all, the Minister of Finance certainly has some sway with regards to whoever they appoint to be board members, and it could be Kojo Kwame or it could be Kelly. You would have put a person there. So is the state capture hidden because of the name or not? Is an issue. Issue of competence, I think is important here. And if you look outside of the state, you'll see that because of the 30 years in which the firm has run on values and skills, our alumni are everywhere in the banking and financial institution of deep influence in what they do. Should companies like ours create subpar personnel? We shouldn't. And if they have the technical requirements, should we or should we not lose them? I think it comes down to really whether we continue with a sense of cynicism and, a minister trying to enrich himself. I suspect that the issue of public service is one that really has been with the family for a long time, and I came into it with that aspect. Of that, I do not take a salary. I do not take a per diem. So those are not the objectives that I come with. As I mentioned earlier, it was so easy to get a banking license over these 30 years if one chose to. But our expertise was in investment, and we are not going to drift because there were opportunities to do that. Did we have problems in these areas? We did, and therefore, would you have people that you trust that are professional to participate in those sectors? Yes, you will. So Kelly may be one of the directors at the central bank. That is out of maybe 9 or something. In terms of coming into any organization with people that you feel have the capacity to help. Yeah, I think we have 10 directors at the ministry, of which we promoted to be coordinating directors, and Samson is one of the 10 directors. I think you also realize that in the past maybe years, quite a number of years before we came into government, the Ministry of Finance lacked people with investment expertise, and so there was nothing happening promotionally in that area. And I think we should celebrate the entry of an investment expert into that ministry. So you could look at it, half empty or half full. You could be cynical about a motive to state capture industry. You could also look at the results of growth in the industry and say that something positive is happening. Accusations, therefore, of trying to stymie other competitors has never been our view. We have grown from a cantonment to enterprise 30 years ago into a high street enterprise. We know how to grow in small doses, and we have done that. So, Mr. Chairman, let me assure you that that cannot be the motive. If people are using the aftermath of the banking crisis as a way of finding data point to illuminate this, I think the results of where we are with the banking crisis is clear. I think DataBank's reputation as an investment house and not a banking institution is also very clear. And I think we also came to really do public service. And so far, that is what we have continued to do. So yes, they may declare that, but honorable members, I'll give you the assurance that we came into public service to serve. We came to bring the best skill set and to advance our promotion as a country. And the values that we brought with us will really not encourage us to assume such dastardly objectives for the nation.
Mr. Chairman, related to that is some key indicators people look at. For example, I hold in my hands the DAMSA report, which is published by your own data bank, and you take one instrument like the M Fund, which was launched in 2004. The total assets under management from 2004 to 2017 was just a little above 313 million. But between 2017 and 2020, when you became finance minister, it shot up from 313 to 808 million, according to your own Damsel report. Over 500 million cedis, almost 500 million cedis in actual increment. That's some whopping 258%. And if you look at the previous years, the 13 or 14 years prior to 2017, since the M Fund was launched, it has never done this well. So people are looking at these numbers. You take enterprise insurance, for example. When the ambulances that we purchased was to be insured, it was enterprise that was selected. Frontline healthcare workers, the insurance of our heroes in this COVID-19 fight is enterprise insurance, which your dear wife, our Rock of Ages, who we are all very proud of, is director of. So these are real numbers, real facts. Meanwhile, other businesses are collapsing and others are closing shop. So people are pointing to these real indicators. How do you respond to that? M-Fund and enterprise being given all of these big insurance deals under you as finance minister?
Yeah. Thank you very much indeed for this question. I think we should really, Mr. Chairman, examine these issues properly. If you look in the landscape for asset management, we are talking, Mr. Chairman, about a 30-year company with incredible human resources that literally developed the asset management business. You would wonder whether that company was also victimized.
Honorable Minister, we can't hear you from here.
You would wonder also whether that company was also victimized in times when the political season was different. But I think that the key issue becomes one of competence and fair judgment, and when you come in to bid for certain things. Now the question about moving from 330 to 800 and something, as you mentioned, the question is, how much in resources and new monies were in the marketplace, and therefore what was the proportion of that to that. Should a company like that grow? Of course it should grow. We talk about enterprise insurance, you talk about what a company that is been here since 1924, which has built up a life business that is par none, and a general business that is par none. I think the challenge of companies that have durability and invest in their companies to build their balance sheets and train people, as opposed to new companies that are just registered, as happened in the banking institutions, leading to the collapse, should be really examined. I think it's easy, really, to just throw stones at it and say that it is because one is a finance minister. But as I assured you, I don't get involved in any of these things. I've not been a director since whatever. And maybe there's just more boldness in coming in to bid for things, and in people assessing the capacity of these companies. Really, I have told the NIC and these regulators that they ought to be publishing productivity, assets under management, etc. And maybe we as a government should be drawing a line that if you are below a certain amount capacity, you can manage our resources. There has to be a way in which we credit assess as opposed to say, I also have a company and I couldn't do it. And I think that should be revelatory and transparent, and we should be looking to build first-class companies, but not ascribe it to the fact that somebody is a finance minister, etc., and that's why that is what is happening. So I will warrant a challenge for us to begin to look at the capacities of all of these companies before such easy talk is allowed, which is also quite demoralizing to building and investing in your people if you want to create first-class companies. But assurance that no, I do not get involved in these things. This work is for public service to enhance where the Republic is going. And if you have been able to build strong companies over a certain period, even over 30 years, surely there are times and opportunities in which that will show and illustrate that.
Mr. Chairman, finally from me will be a COVID question, and I make reference to Appendix 12A of the 2021 budget and financial policy document. If you look at the status of COVID-19 alleviation program, CAP 1, the entries in there, some of the numbers are very worrying. For example, if you take item number 5, transfer of Government of Ghana COVID account for Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Regional Integration for airfares for 2,221 returnees from Lebanon.
Mr. Chairman, could I excuse myself for a second?